divine masses of the light, greetings. It is such a pleasure and a blessing to connect with you today. So here we are in the backcountry of Bella Coola, BC on New Hawk territory by some flowing water. I found an old abandoned picnic table here, rotten in words. So in today's video we will be discussing, why does adult shame go askew? Why do we become the very shame we carry? Why do we pass on the shame that we carry to others? Why does adult shame go askew? One of the most devastating impacts of shame that we mention each and every time is that you will pass it on. You will pass on the shame you carry if you don't heal your adult shame. And if you don't stop it here, you will pass it on. Now, a child will pass on shame to other children. Those of you who have ever watched your children play with other kids, or listened to your children come home and tell you some of the things kids, that said to them, or what they said to other kids, yes, you see, they can pass on shame. Children can be brutally cruel to each other when they want to be, but they bounce. Children are not fragile. They are made of rubber, if they are made of anything, and they bounce. That's why we say, as parents, if you have made a mistake, you haven't ruined their life. They won't break. Like, they may fall down and they will bounce back. Again, as kids, they got some latitude there. So adolescents can be absolutely cruel to each other, passing on shame, but again, it tends to bounce. But when you're grown up, you have the power to really damage others far more than any child or adolescent ever has. Therefore, the phenomenon of shame in infancy, childhood, and in adolescence that is passing it on doesn't really come to maturity until your adult years. You see, some of you, the offender in your life was in adolescence. Some of you, as children, the older brother or sister, or the older brother and sister friend was the source of your shame. The physical abuse or mental abuse or even the sexual abuse have come from an older peer, in that sense, an adolescent or a grown-up. It came mostly, however, from adult authorities around you. Was it not? The mother, father, grandparent, an uncle, auntie, teacher, coach, whoever, in that sense, that shame was far more devastating to you. Surely those that were beaten up by their best friends, older brother or sister, that physical abuse was really damaging and has produced shame. For those of you who were sexually abused by that older sibling, we don't mean to diminish the scar impact that it had, but for those of you who were abused in whatever way by a grown-up, that scar cut even deeper. Therefore, now as you reverse it, put the shoe on the other foot, as it were. Maybe you passed on shame as a child or an adolescent to others, but as a grown-up, the scars that you can produce by doing that are even more deep and even more profound. Therefore, it's important to realize that the effects of shame passing on is more potent, more powerful in adult shame than it is in any other level. It is important for you to look and see, what impact have I had with my current shame on my power, through the gifts, on my own chemistry, and on my own physical health, on my sense of separation, my sense of broken and inflexibility, on the abandoning of the world or of myself, on the shame I have already passed to others, either peers or children. Why did adult shame go askew? That's what we were going to talk about today. Alright, so why did adult shame go askew? Okay, so the first thing that went askew with adult shame is, you live in a world where there is no permission to have adult shame here and now. Now, for so many years, of course, shame was never to be talked about. It was a taboo subject, and it was something you kept hidden in the closets of your family. No one wanted to admit that they had been taught that their parents were subhuman or superhuman, and therefore taught them that they were flawed and defective and would never be good enough. No one wanted to admit the abandonment had such a profound impact, or that there was even abuse or wrongdoing in the first place. Now, it can be admitted in a more enlightened society, and rather the brave effort of certain therapists, psychologists, healers, and people out there who have been willing to talk about their own shame and help people get in touch with it through authors' books, such as Tom Bradshaw and others like the healers through their work have done a tremendous service to humanity. That's very true. Even with all that openness and all that willingness, now people are finally willing to talk about it, but you are not supposed to have adult shame. That's supposed to be, ended when you grow up, when you're out of the house, done with college, when you're married, have a career, when you finally have your own kids. You're not supposed to have it anymore, and therefore it's supposed to be over with. Whatever happened to you in your infancy, child, adolescence, well, that's not supposed to have any impact anymore. Therefore, you live in a world where there is no permission to have adult shame here and now. Even those, as a grown-up, who go to various workshops or various therapy groups where they get out their teddy bears and write their letters with their left hand, in that sensing, to their childhood, etc., are dealing with their infancy shame. They're dealing with their child shame. They're dealing with their adolescence shame. But they are not dealing with the shame that is occurring presently in their adult years. You see, in your world as an adult, you're still not allowed to have shame. Now, once you have grown up, once you've got a job, once you have gone to career, have a house, have a family, have a wife or a husband, or have kids, that shame is supposed to somehow just disappear. Poof. So because there is no permission for adult shame, it comes the most deceptive, insidious, and pretentious, and therefore the most destructive and the most damaging of all. All right, number 2, the second thing that went wrong or askew with adult shame is you live in a world where there is less and less permission to feel and less permission to think with that kind of intensity. So you are told there simply is not enough time to think and feel through life. There's simply way too much to feel, way too much to think about, that you just can't slow down and do it with any kind of intensity. You have to do it in that digestive form, digestive thoughts and digestive feelings very quickly and as fast as humanly possible, very rapidly, skipping along the surface like a piece of shale, because there is just too much to think and feel about. For people to stop and feel with their depth of intensity, what to think with any depth of intensity is considered inappropriate. It's considered melodramatic. It's considered too sensitive in your world these days, and therefore even considered structured, counterproductive. And don't waste your time doing that. Got to keep going. No time to dive deep into thinking and feeling my experiences through life. In order to deal with adult shame, so it doesn't go wrong or askew, you must work with the intensity of thoughts and feelings you are experiencing. Make time to journal, self-reflect, dive deep within and process your thoughts and your feelings daily. I know what it feels like to make time to process, reflect, organize, and heal my unprocessed thoughts and feelings. Okay, the third thing that goes askew with adult shame is you live in a world where you are supposed to know how to already receive love. A shame-based person has the most difficult of anyone for asking for help, but yet they must. Beyond asking, there is this other part that people tend to forget, and a lot of you forget, and that is the receiving. You may say, but I have asked for help. I asked my higher self dozens of times. I asked God, Goddess of all it is. I have talked to the Ancient Ones. I have talked to this one. I have talked to that one. Every co-creator I can imagine, I have asked. I have asked, I have asked, I have asked. I have seen every healer. Nothing is happening. Did you ever stop to receive it, though? Oh, asking is not enough. Is that what you're saying? Exactly. So it's one thing to say the child in me and the adolescent in me doesn't know how, but I'm supposed to be able to receive love. I'm not supposed to admit I don't know yet, though I could have learned and I have technique, but I haven't done it. So then I pretend that I do. And of course, healing shame requires the receiving of that help and that love. My child needs help. My adolescent needs help. And my young adult needs help. But I shouldn't. But I do. Maybe even more than my child, more than my adolescent, more than the young adult, however few or many years ago that was. So I'm well into my 40s, and I'm well into my 50s. I'm a spiritual person. I don't need help. I should have already received, but I haven't. Huh? How's that going for you? Open up to receive love, Divine One. All right, the fourth thing that goes askew with adult shame is psychology has sort of said shame is ours, but in fact shame is a spiritual problem, and therefore can only ultimately be fully healed spiritually. The only way to really heal shame is through your spirituality, and you must have help from spiritual forces more than you. It is also unique in that it is one of the few, not the only one, but one of the few melodies that are mostly clearly a spiritual problem more than a psychological one. Now, admittedly, psychology has stepped forth and has sort of taken that bull by the horns and sort of made shame its thing. There are therapists all over the place popping up who are now dealing with shame and focusing on shame, and their specialty is dealing with abuse and shame and sexual abuse. Whole organizations are dedicated to rooting out the time when you were sexually abused, whether you were or not. They root out the shame and find it in that sense. So psychology has sort of said shame is ours, but in fact shame is a spiritual problem and therefore can only ultimately be fully healed spiritually. Those therapists who are having any genuine success are dealing with spiritual issues such as your relationship with your higher self and your relationship with God, Goddess of all that is, are dealing with a spiritual issue. Ultimately, the only way you can heal shame is as much as you can root it out, as much as you can identify it, as much as you can articulate and elegantly elaborate upon it. The only way to really heal shame is through your spirituality, and you must have help from your spiritual forces more than you. But in your world, spirituality is devalued, and personal spirituality and spiritual experience are devalued more and more despite the new age of new spirituality. True spiritual experience, personally and otherwise, is devalued more and more. And though that phase has passed in that sensing, it's still the presence of devaluing spirituality, and therefore limits a way of you healing your own shame spiritually. With the devaluation of spirituality, with the devaluation of personal spiritual experience, and the alchemy of diversity, dealing with the spiritual crisis is part of the reason crises are increasing, so is that you're not allowed to have a spiritual crisis anymore. Psychology breaks down, yes, not spiritual crisis, no, and shame is a spiritual crisis, and you're not allowed to have, and therefore, despite all the psychology work that can be do wonderful things, it's not going to heal it until you dip in and reach into your spirituality, where the solutions can be found and where the healing can be found. Okay, the fifth thing that goes askew with adult shame is, in your world, you value uniqueness and value sameness. Normalcy. Everybody being the same. Everybody fitting the mold. Nobody rocking the boat. No one is too much of a unique individual. No one expressing too much strange, eccentric behavior. Oh, we can have a few or a little individual uniquenesses, but not a whole bunch of you being individual or being unique, but instead valuing sameness. But you see, in fact, you're all unique. If you heal your shame, you need to touch and come in touch with your uniqueness in a world that doesn't allow you to do that. Okay, the sixth thing that goes askew with adult shame is people don't want to deal with things in depth. They just want a superficial surface healing. In your world, more and more of you are functioning in a world of sound bites or information bites. You know, you hear on the news what they want you to hear. They're really talking about real problems, only what they want you to hear. distract you from. Never giving you the full truth, just a lie and distraction after lie and distraction. You know, the news makes you focus on a balloon in the sky. No, not the real problems or the focus. Only on sickness, but not on the hidden bills that pass under our noses. It downsides the most important things we should know and upscale the most useless things we are hearing. We have been doing this for so long that we believe it to be normal now. Come on, Chris, the news and government wouldn't lie to us. Don't question it. They are not downsizing or upscaling real events. They are telling the truth. Yeah, right, they are. They've been lying to us for so long that most can't see right from left, right in front of them. You see, not many really know the news. You see, there is only so much room for the headline, only so much news in a 15-minute soundbite of headline news. Therefore, it was filled with misinformation. Not that it shouldn't have been, not that what they said wasn't valuable. The more information, the more reporting, the better. But you see, what ends up happening is other important news gets shoved aside. Most times there is information that everyone should know, but you find out barely anybody knows about it. And other times there's information that is not relevant at all, but everybody knows. Maybe around celebrities and such. It wasn't headline distraction news because of the sound bite, because of the information bite of your reality. So much in that sensing that was headline 6 months ago or 2 years ago, people assume the problem is solved because it is no longer the headline. But you see, they can only have one headline every day. Headline news tries to do something about it. They only report little pieces of soundbite information. Well, the same is true in life in that sensing, you see. I want to deal with shame. Nope. Be done with it. We have been talking about shame for over 10 years now, starting with each phase and doing intense detail on how to heal each phase of shame, and yet talking more about it because you can't just talk about shame in a quick soundbite headliner and then deal with it. Shame takes years to fully heal. It takes more than a sound bite, more than information bite. It takes a depth of exploration and experience, and it takes time. Just because you live in a world where that time is not allowed, where everything is supposed to be, if you can't sell it in 10 seconds, then it's not sold. If you can't convey it in 5 minutes, then it's not conveyed. If you can't solve it in 5 minutes, then it goes unsolved. And that creates problems and makes it more difficult. And what goes wrong with dealing with shame, particularly adult shame. All right, the seventh thing that goes askew with adult shame is, as a teenager, you can get by functioning and acting as a child. But as a grown-up, you cannot. When you're grown up, you need to be an adult. For a child cannot function in your world. An adolescent cannot function in your world. They can function in their world, but not in yours. And when you're separated from yourself, and having yourself to rely upon, you must rely upon a child, an adolescent, and they frankly can't deal with the complexities and intricacies of your world. Now, when you're adolescent, you can get by. There are a lot of teenagers that act childish. Those of you who are parents, right? Look at your own teenager child, your children, right? And roll your eyes at how childish they sometimes are. They seem awfully much younger, don't they? More childish now than when you were a teenager. And your parents thought the same thing as you. That is what a teenager can get by functioning and acting as a child, but an adult grown up cannot. Similarly, the impact of shame feels you cannot be fixed, that you are hopeless, and you cannot receive love as a grown-up. That dictates the conclusion, the dogma becomes imprisoning. Furthermore, with shame, you feel you must fix the world before you can be fixed, or you must abandon the world. You feel that way as a child, but there is not often too much you can do about it. You feel that way as an adolescent, and there is a limited amount you can do about it. But as a grown-up, when you feel you must abandon and fix the world, there is a lot you can do about it. That can be very devastating to you, to those around you. you have a potential of playing out that dictate more profoundly in your grown-up years. In conclusion, you have worked so beautifully and so patiently with your shame. Don't stop now. Don't stop short. This is an example of what we mean by rounding third base and heading home. Don't just work with those previous ways and then leave this one, the most devastating of them all, wide open, that you end up despising yourself and passing it on to others and infecting others with it. It is time now, and you are more than ready to truly end this shame, to truly heal this pain. If you would like any healing around adult shame, then please feel free to contact me. Each of you is unique. Some techniques you might like, yes, I need to do these certain techniques with this person, different technique with this person, right? We don't say everybody who feels shame must do this. Rather, we're going to offer you a smorgasbord of choices, things to work with, several approaches to try, combinations to put together that will match and fit a very unique formulation of shame healing. So thanks for listening to me today. This is Chris Parr, Syrian and Lemurian Wisdom's